we as most people are now living such a fast-paced societies and are so much focused on just one thing and forget that what's really important in our lives. For example, we can be focused on earning money and that we live almost not knowing what our priority is, like health, family, or even our own happiness. I want to ask Snim, in that case, where do we put a break point and how? Like if we just kind of lost where we are, and sometimes we have to look back and put a break point and look back to what really priorities are. I mean, to some people, maybe money is priority. To some people, happiness or family is a priority. But we kind of lose that during the time of chasing for something that we want. And sometimes we regret once, for example, some people may be chasing for one thing and find out they're sick. And then that's when they become, oh, why didn't I think of that ahead of time? So time to time, there must be some kind of a ways you can put a break to it and rethink of your life.
제가 학생에게, 중고등학생에게 너 지금 제일 원하는 게 뭐냐? 이렇게 물으면 학생이 뭐라 그럴까요?
Say I asked the student, what is it you most desire? How would the student answer?
He will probably say that he wants, at that time, he would tell you what he wants at the most at that time.
네, 그게 뭘까요?
What would that be?
Maybe going to a better college or I don't know.
네. 제가 물어봅니다. 너 지금 제일 원하는 게 뭐냐?
So let's check this out and let's say, hey, what is it you most want?
공부 잘하는 거요. 그래.
He goes, I want to study better. I want to be a better student.
공부 잘해서 뭐 하는데?
And I ask us, okay, what are you going to do with that?
그래, 좋은 대학 가죠.
So that I can go to a better college.
그럼 좋은 대학 가서 뭐 하는데?
So what are you going to do with that?
그래야 좋은 데 취직하죠.
So I can get into good company.
그럼 좋은 데 취직해서 뭐 하는데?
Well, what are you going to do with that?
그래, 돈 많이 벌죠.
So I can earn a lot of money.
돈 많이 벌어서 뭐 하는데?
You know, what are you going to do with that money?
그래야 큰 집 사죠.
So I buy a big house.
그래, 자동차도 사죠.
And buy a car.
그래, 좋은 집 사고 좋은 자동차 사서 뭐 하는데?
So what are you going to do with a nice car and nice house?
이렇게 계속 묻는다면
If we were to ask continuously like that, in that vein,
마지막에 어떤 답이 나올까요?
then what's the final answer?
I don't know. That's what I wanted to find out. I mean, there's got to be a break point, but it seems like it's just infinite.
근데 일반인에게 물어보면 대부분 다 답이 같이 나옵니다.
If you ask just regular folks, basically the answer is pretty much the same.
답이 멈추는 지역이 어딜까요? 맨 마지막에. 예를 들면 여행 가죠. 여행 가서 뭐 하는데? 구경하죠. 구경해서 뭐 하는데? 이런 식으로 계속 묻는다면 어디 가서 멈추게 될까요?
So if we were to continue this question, so where would it stop, right? If you say, okay, I'm going to earn money to go on a travel. It's okay, then what are you going to do? I'm going to see, cool stuff. Then what are you going to do? So where does this end, these questions and answers?
When you die?
네, 행복하죠. 그렇죠. 행복하다.
Ultimately, they go, I want to be happy.
그렇기 때문에 모든 사람의 궁극적 목표는 행복입니다.
So basically, everybody's objective is to be happy.
그건 부처님만이 아니라 사람들에게 직접 물어보면 다 거기에 가서 끝이 납니다.
Not just Buddha. If you ask everybody, ultimately it boils down to I want to be happy.
그런데 문제는 사람들이 돈을 많이 벌고 지위가 높아지고 이쁜 여자하고 결혼하고 자녀가 많고 이러면 행복할 거라고 생각하는 거예요.
But the problem is that most people think that they'll be happy if they have enough money or high enough title, marry a pretty wife or have a lot of children. They think that's going to make them happy.
근데 그런 사람이 행복하냐 하는 거예요.
Then you go and ask the people who live like that and go, are you happy?
한국의 예를 든다면 제일 돈 많은 사람이 거의 식물인간이 돼서 병원에 누워 있는데 그게 행복하냐는 거예요.
So basically, if you look at Korea, the richest person in Korea is in a comatose situation. She is in a hospital. Is that happy?
제일 지위가 높은 대통령이 된 사람이 감옥에 있는데 그게 행복하냐는 거예요.
The person who held the highest office in the land, who was the president, now is in jail. Is he happy?
근데 사람들은 행복할 거라 이렇게 환상을 갖고 있습니다.
But people have this illusion that all these will make them happy.
대부분 거기에 자기 목표에 도달하지 못해서 불행하다고 생각합니다.
And they think they're still unhappy because they haven't achieved all these things that would make them happy.
근데 거기 도달한 사람도 아무도 행복한 사람이 없어요.
But there's no one actually who's happy who have achieved all this.
옆에서 볼 때는 행복해 보입니다.
I mean, they look happy, if you look at them from a distance.
그런데 그런 지위가 높거나 돈이 많거나 인기 연예인이거나 이런 사람들이 보통 사람보다 어쩌면 고뇌가 더 많습니다.
But if you have a lot of money, if you have a high enough title position, if you're well known, they actually have more issues than ordinary folks.
저는 그런 사람의 고뇌를 상담하니까 그들이 얼마나 힘드는지를 알죠.
And some of them come to me with their issues, so I actually know because I heard from them directly.
그런데 돈을 쫓던 사람은 돈이 없으면 이제 자기 인생은 끝났다고 생각합니다.
But people who's been chasing after money, if the money disappears, then he thinks his life is over.
지위가 있던 사람은 지위가 없어지면 자기가 인생이 끝났다고 생각합니다.
A person who was in a very high position of power, if that title disappears, he thinks his life is over.
인기가 높은 사람은 인기가 떨어지면 자기 인생이 끝났다고 생각합니다.
A person who was super popular, if that popularity fades, then he thinks his life is over.
그런데 우리가 객관적으로 보면 그거는 그냥 하나의 허상일 뿐이에요.
If you look at it objectively, that was just a temporary phenomenon, an illusion.
그것은 마치 온라인상에서 사람이 영화 속에서 사람이 죽으면 끝나는 줄 알지만은 그건 영화일 뿐인 것과 같습니다.
It's almost like seeing somebody die or get killed in a movie, and you realize that's not real because that person hasn't really died.
우리가 돈을 쫓는 것은 담배 피우는 사람이 좋은 담배를 쫓는 것과 같습니다.
So when we chase after money, it's as if a smoker chases after the next, the better cigarette, the better taste.
차를 마시는 사람이 더 비싼 차, 더 고급 차를 쫓는 것과 같습니다.
A tea loafer looking for that next tea, next big thing.
마약을 하는 사람이 더 좋은 마약을 구하는 것과 같다.
A drug addict is looking for the next high, the better high.
그러니까 그것을 담배를 피우지 않는 사람 입장에서는 좋은 담배, 나쁜 담배 아무 필요가 없습니다.
But from a non-smoker, there's no difference between a good tasting cigarette or bad tasting cigarette.
술을 먹지 않는데 좋은 술, 나쁜 술이 무슨 의미가 있습니까?
What significance does a good bourbon has opposed to bad bourbon to a non-drinker?
지금 오늘 우리 사회는 이렇게 소비에 중독이 되어 있는 상태입니다.
Currently, we live in a society that's addicted to consumption.
자본주의란 게 모든 것을 화폐로 계산하는 거잖아요.
It's capital. The nature of capitalism is to turn everything into a currency, basically.
부모가 자녀를 위해서 어떤 선물을 했을 때도 애들이 뭐라고 묻습니까?
So when, as a parent gives a gift to their children, what do the children ask?
이거 얼마짜리야? 이러잖아요.
So, how much did it cost? How expensive was this?
여러분들이 사랑의 표시로 주는 반지도 얼마짜리냐가 사랑의 표현이잖아요.
You know, it's the cost of the diamond rings you give, you know, to your engagement. You know, that determines the value of the love.
시골에 사는 부모가 쌀이나 채소나 이런 것을 키워서 자녀 준다고 도시로 가져가면 자녀는 아니 이거 몇 푼 든다고 이걸 이문 데까지 가져왔냐 이렇게 말합니다.
You know, so parents who farms, you know, they take the fruits of their harvest, right, and truck it out to the soul to give it to their children. The children would scold them and say, you know what, why did you spend so much effort and drove all the way up here to give me these things?
이렇게 우리는 고급 담배를 쫓는 담배 피우는 사람이 고급 담배를 쫓는 것처럼 돈의 소비에 중독이 돼서 지금 살아가고 있습니다.
So we all live addicted to consumption, like a smoker who's addicted to that better taste.
그러다 어느 날 폐암이라 해서 되돌아봤을 때 담배를 피우던 것이 자신을 해친 거라는 걸 알 수 있잖아요.
Then smokers will get realize that, you know what, smoking was bad for me.
그것처럼 우리는 병이 들거나 돈이 부도가 나거나 망신을 사거나 하면 그래서 세상에서 아무도 알아주지 않는 손가락질 받는 사람이 되면 그때 자기 삶이 허무했구나 하는 걸 알게 되는 거예요.
So when we lose our money, when we get sick, you know, when we lose our popularity, you know, that's when you look back on your life and realize that all this was an illusion.
그러니까 그건 언제 돌아봐야 되는 게 아니라 지금 돌아봐야 되는 거예요.
So it's not a matter of timing of when you stop. You have to pause now and look back.
자기 만약에 지금 말기암 환자라서 한 달 안에 죽는다면 자기 지금 하는 일을 계속 할까요?
Say you had terminal cancer and you only had 1 month to live. Would you continue doing what you're doing today?
만약에 제가 한 달 후에 죽는다 하면 이 일을 계속 할까요? 뭐 할까요?
If somebody asked me, would you continue doing if you from now? How would I answer?
맛있는 거 먹으러 갈까요?
Would I go and try to get a taste of good food?
한 달 남았으니까 결혼을 할까요?
So since I only have a month left, would I hurry up and get married?
한 달 남았으니까 바다 구경 갈까요?
Because I only have a month left, would I go to a beach front and just, you know, look at the seas?
내일 죽는다 하면 오늘까지 정문직설하고 내일 죽을 거 아니에요.
But if I were to die tomorrow, I would just continue doing my Dharma talk until today before I die.
당신은 내일 죽는다면 오늘 회사 출근할까요?
But if somebody told you that you were going to die tomorrow, would you go to work today?
당신은 내일 죽는다면 오늘 가게 나갈까요?
If somebody said you're going to die tomorrow, would you go open up your store today?
그러니까 언제나 내일 죽는다 해도 달리 다른 길이 없는 이 길밖에 없는 그런 삶을 살면 좋지 않을까 싶습니다.
So I think if somebody tells you, even if you knew that you were going to die tomorrow, if you continue doing what you're doing today, that's the life that you want to live.
오늘 자녀가 공부 안 했다고 야단치고 부인하고 어떤 일로 싸웠다. 내가 내일 죽거나 자녀나 부인이 내일 죽는다 해도 우리는 그 문제를 갖고 싸울까요?
You had a fight with your wife or you scolded your daughter. But if you knew that you were dying tomorrow or if one of them were dying tomorrow, would you still haggle over the same issues.
그래서 많은 사람들이 살아서 힘들고 지금 힘들고 지나가서 후회하고 이런 일이 반복되는 거예요.
So everybody lives in this repetitive cycle in which you cause yourself today, and then in which you regret over that suffering.
네, 지금 점검하세요. 제이슨이 인터넷이 좀 불안정한 곳에 있습니다.
Okay.
Well, the internet connection of Jason is not stable, so the last part Sunim said was, now is the time to look back, and the breaking point you were mentioning is right now.
Okay. I just want to tell Snim that thanks for the answers that fulfilled my heart. And I have never realized, I was always looking for that break point, but I never realized that it is always now to start. So I just want to say thank you.
한국에서는 몇 년 전에 배가 침몰을 하면서 많은 학생이 300여 명의 학생이 죽은 적이 있습니다.
So several years ago in South Korea, a huge ship sank and killed, and several hundred students drowned.
자녀를 잃은 부모가 저에게 울면서 이런 얘기를 했습니다.
So one of the parents who lost their child was crying as she told me.
아이들이 유학도 가고 공부를 하려면 내가 돈을 벌어야 되기 때문에 애들하고 한 번 여행도 못 가고 한 번 같이 지내지도 못하고 오직 돈 버는 일에만 이렇게 몰두했다는 거예요.
All I did was focus on earning money because I wanted to pay for my child's future. I wanted to send him abroad to study, so I had to save every cent. So we didn't get to spend any time together as a family.
근데 지금 자녀가 없으니 돈 벌 의미가 없어졌다는 거예요.
I said, "What? But earning money right now has no significance. Has no meaning to me anymore because my child died."
이런 일이 생길 줄 알았으면 내가 돈 버는 것보다는 애들하고 하루 같이 밥을 먹든 같이 여행을 다니든 애들하고 조금 시간을 더 가졌던 게 이것보다 훨씬 더 소중한 일이다 하는 걸 알게 됐다.
So if I knew this was going to happen, I would have spent, had another meal with my family or spent more time with their child, knowing that would have been much more meaningful.
또 그 사건이 나고 어떤 학부형이 저에게 이렇게 말했습니다.
So after that thinking, another parent told me this.
그동안에 애가 공부 못한다고 늘 야단을 쳤는데 이제 저녁에 아이가 방문을 열고 학교 하가고 집으로 돌아오는 것만 해도 반갑다는 거예요.
So before I used to scold my child for not being a good student, but these days after that incident, had seen my child come back home after school, just the fact of him showing up, it's meaningful to me.
행복은 먼 곳에 있는 것이 아닙니다. 늘 우리 곁에 충만해 있습니다.
So happiness is not far away. Happiness is right here, all around us.
우리가 그것을 모르고 있다는 거예요. 다른 데 미쳐가지고.
Because we're so distracted, we don't recognize that.
그래서 부처님께서 지금 여기 깨어 있으라고 말하는 거예요.
That's why Buddha taught us, be awake here and now.
Thank you
네.
for the answers.